This week's mailbag comes to us from Melinda. Hi, Lisa. Today I had a Sunday basket win. Our central air stopped cooking. I froze. Where would I find the choice home warranty information to make a claim? Then I thought, oh, it's in the 2.0 purple slash pocket labeled home. What a sigh of relief. There it was at my fingertips. Oh, the time I saved not having to hunt for what I needed. I felt so organized. And that's such a good feeling. Our home sounds a lot like yours. We created an apartment downstairs for 4 children. All of them are autistic. We finally got the last diagnosis for a 14-year-old boy. I've decided to do the kids' room. He really needs it. His sister, who is a year younger, finally clicked thanks to having her help me declutter some bins. She was impressed when I could tell her exactly where my box of gloves were in the first aid bin. Organized 365 Katie makes life so much better than chaos. Before, if Katie could not find an article of clothing in her drawer, she would dump the entire drawer out on the floor, and there it would stay for weeks. That is just one of many drawers. Now she is keeping her room tidy. You are right. Organization is a learnable skill that even autistic children can learn, and this will benefit them for life. Again, Lisa, thank you. You deserve every rich blessing the Lord has for you. Do you have an Organized 365 success story? If so, we would love to hear about it. Please send us an email at customerservice@organized365 and tell us how you have taken back your home, your paper, and your life with Organized 365.
Welcome to the Organized 365 podcast. I'm your host, professional organizer, productivity expert, and motivational speaker, Lisa Woodruff. This podcast will help you embrace progress over perfection and create lasting functional organizing in your home. I have so much to share with you, so let's get started. I am super excited to have Angela Watson back on the Organized 365 podcast. If you are an educator, you probably already know Angela. And for those of you that don't, we're going to have a great discussion today about what is the state of the teacher today after having been teaching for 2 years with COVID. Where are all the teachers going? Where did they all go? We're going to discuss a lot of what we're seeing in the media, the solution that she has come up with and Organized 365 has come up with, how these solutions are two halves of the same whole and fit together so nicely. So many of you are in both Angela's programs and the Organized 365 programs. And you're like, get everybody in the opposite program. Like we want all of our friends in both programs because they work really well. And then we're going to round out this discussion by talking about how can we make even a bigger impact. Angela and I are really invested in helping the education community, teachers, administrators, everyone that is in the whole education ecosphere to really be supported so that they can do what they're uniquely created to do, which is teach kids and bring out of all ages and bring out their unique gifting so they can go on and be contributors to society. So, Angela, welcome back to the Organized 365 podcast. It's been a minute.
Yes, it has. Good to be here, Lisa.
How have your last couple of years been since we've had you on the podcast?
It's been a wild ride, as you mentioned, but we're still here and we're still passionate about this work.
Yeah. So before we get started, for people who are not familiar or haven't heard you before, tell them, what is your website? What is your podcast? What are your flagship products that you sell?
Sure. So truthforteachers.com is the best place to learn about me. I've been sharing teacher resources in one iteration or another of that site since 2003. I spent 11 years in the classroom and I've spent more than a decade now as an instructional coach. So I have a podcast for teachers called Truth for Teachers. I have 5 books for teachers. I have printable resources. We have a Truth for Teachers Writers Collective in which other practicing classroom teachers are sharing their ideas, what's working, what's not, and their reflections as well, so that we can get leadership from those who are in the classroom. And of course, the 40-hour Teacher Workweek, which is something that I've been doing since 2015 to help teachers take back control of their time.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that one a little bit more. Again, I know we've also reviewed it on past podcasts, but I don't think you can hear about it enough. I reached out to Angela through Voxer. I've done this with a couple of business owners. I'm like, Angela, we've got to talk offline. Like, what are you doing? What am I doing? And mostly when I first reached out to you, it was at least 3 years ago. It might have been 4 years ago. And it was because I was really trying to provide CEUs for the products that we had. You also were doing, you were like, yep, I'm trying to do the same thing. It looks like along the way, we both just started offering professional development certificates, and you could take it to your school or school district and have them figure out if you get credit. It's nearly impossible for us to find a way to create a CEU or a professional development hour that's going to work in multiple states, multiple districts. Like, it's very onerous on the content creator to create something like that. And, you know, when you go to create these CEUs or these professional development hours, every single thing has to tie back into how does it affect a student in the classroom. None of these CEUs or professional development hours are about how to support teachers as the provider of the education, right?
Yes. Yes. So there's no like federal certification. I mean, education in the United States is mostly handled at the state level and the local level. So there's not like this one, I would love to have this one process where I could just apply and get certified for, even a region of the country, just like the Northeast, the Southeast, the whatever. No. It's each one of the 50 states has their own process, and it's extremely time intensive, and, they want different things. So unfortunately, offering CEUs, being accredited with a state is really challenging unless you're targeting just to one specific state, which you and I aren't, and then your other point about just how challenging that whole thing is in terms of trying to tie it back into student impact. I think that there is a lack of understanding amongst just the general public and a lot of folks in leadership positions beyond the school. So I'm not talking about school-based professionals, but I think people who are distanced more from what's actually happening in daily worker schools misunderstand how important the teacher as the individual is. And how, if we're not caring for the teacher as an individual and thinking about their own, not just professional development, but personal development, who they are as a person, how they're showing up in the classroom, like all of those things impact students. And anyone who's in a school can see that clearly. If a teacher is struggling, mentally, physically, emotionally with any aspect of their life, it's going to show up in the classroom. So, it's frustrating to me that it's like we think that teachers are just like robot machines there for the good of the children, and they don't have their own needs. Like, getting a teacher organized has a huge impact on how capable they feel. Are they frazzled with their kids? Are they rushing around and trying to find things? And, I thought I had this and now I lost it. And like, it just creates this chaotic energy in the classroom. So, you and I have both, I think, done a good job of being able to tie it into student impact. But I just want to say, in addition to these things benefiting students, even if they didn't, they would still have value, because teachers as human beings have value. The school system would collapse without educators. Yeah. And so tending to the needs of educators is just so important, whether or not the CEUs speak to that or not.
Yes. And we're both very solution-oriented, positive people. But I'm going to take a few minutes of this podcast to pour a little bit of salt on the wound and really get to the crux of what is the state of education today for teachers? Like, what is coming out in some of the surveys that we've seen in the last year? What really is happening? And then we will talk about the solution. So the first one I want to really talk about is the National Education Association, the NEA, is the National Teachers Union. So it's the largest group of teachers that you can survey. And they did a survey that they released in February that they did in January. And they revealed that 55% of teachers were looking to retire sooner than they had before in the previous fall. That same body did a survey back in the fall, and the statistic was 25%. That is a huge increase of the number of teachers that are expected to leave the profession. Natural attrition for teachers every single year is 8%. So there is a natural attrition to teachers, but there is a definite lack of teachers in the classroom right now being able to take a sick day, being able to leave for a doctor's appointment because there are no subs and in the buildings are short-staffed. There's definitely a lack of teachers out there. Now, interestingly, I was sharing the statistic with a business group that I'm in, a bunch of other CEOs not in the education industry, and two of them had spouses that were in the education industry. And they said, we saw that study, and actually January and February were really bleak times in the education industry in general of 2022. They said even our spouses were thinking about leaving in the beginning of 2022. But then COVID started to abate and the mask mandate got lifted. And now teachers are much more, ready to stick in the fight. I think it was a poorly timed study that got some of those really high returns of more than 1 in 2 teachers saying they're like, yeah, I'm going to get out of this sooner rather than later. But still, there are a lot of teachers that are rethinking their profession. There are a lot of nurses that are rethinking their profession. There are a lot of these emergency responders, first line responders who literally have been running for a full 2 years and never stopped to think about if they like a 4-day work week or if they don't want to return to the office yet, or if they don't feel comfortable. None of these questions have ever been asked of nurses and teachers. They've been in the front lines. They have been running the entire 2 years, and they are starting to come up for air in the summer. And they're going, I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know. Yeah. What are you hearing?
Yes, the same thing that, these past 2 summers were simply not long enough for teachers to recover from the toll that trying to teach in a pandemic and all of the additional demands and stresses. So they just haven't been able to recalibrate, to re-energize, to refocus. And there's just so much unpredictability, which makes it really hard. So, I do think that there are a lot of educators who are thinking about leaving. I also, anytime I talk about this, I always want to mention the percentage of teachers who are happy and thriving, because I think those folks are afraid to say anything right now. They see so many of their colleagues struggling and they're like, I don't want to say it, but I'm actually really happy. My kids are for the most part doing well. We're making good progress. It feels like a fairly normal school year and we're doing great, but they don't want to rub that in the faces of all the teachers who are suffering, because the thing with COVID is, we, as the saying goes, we were all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. And some people were in luxury yachts and some people were, paddleboarding through the ocean. So, we've all had very, very different experiences. Schools have been impacted in different ways. Our families have been impacted in different ways. There's no one singular experience. And it has taken the toll on people in very different ways. They're responding in very different ways. But I'm always just super encouraged to hear that there are teachers that are happy too, because I think it gives you hope. If you think everybody's miserable, everybody's quitting, then what, am I a sucker for staying? Why should I even bother to try this if it's such an impossible job? It's not. It is not an impossible job. There is hope. There are teachers who are happy. There are teachers who are finding work-life balance. And I am forever optimistic about the future of our schools and that we can reimagine the way that we've done things and come out of this even stronger than we were before and fix some of these problems that were going on way before COVID came and really get to the heart of some issues. So I'm not going to stop fighting. I will keep fighting that battle to the end. And I know you will too.
Definitely. But I do think to voice both teachers' views is important. To recognize there are teachers that are like, let's be clear. There's not a single teacher on the planet that got into education because they thought they were going to hit the lottery or they thought it was going to be easy. No teacher was like, you know what I think would be a cakewalk profession? Teaching. And I think I'll make a mint and I'll be able to do it. That's not the kind of person that is drawn into the teaching field to begin with. They are very industrious, hardworking, lifelong learners who enjoy teaching and learning. These are the people. So they're like, the puzzle just got bigger. I will solve the puzzle. I will figure it out. But there is a point where it is untenable and you cannot keep going the way you are. And that's why we are airing this in the summer while you have this breath, this minute away from school, and to give you some resources to help you. So another study I wanted to share was done by Ed Week's. I think it's Education Week, but it's EDW, Ed Week. Is it Ed Week? I don't know. They have a research center and they surveyed 1,300 teachers and they found that the teachers were working on average 54 hours a week. Half of that time was devoted to instruction and half of that time was devoted to non-teaching time, not 26 hours a week of non-teaching time. Now, Angela, this has been, the hill you've staked your claim on years and years and years ago. That's where the 40-hour teacher work week came from. You've done informal surveys or maybe formal surveys of your audience as well. When they come into your program, how many hours a week are they putting into their teaching profession?
So we have run informal studies and we have had formal studies done. And Honestly, 54 hours a week sounds less than what I would
Whoa.
have anticipated.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the people that we're asking are people who are interested in a program to help them work fewer hours. So maybe we skew a little high, but our average is 62 hours a week. And I don't think that's unreasonable for a lot of educators. That sounds pretty on target to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was reading some meme or something, and they're like, teaching is the only profession where you work in order to go to work and then you leave work to work. And I was like, oh yeah. And I literally today was just having this conversation with Greg. For the last couple of weeks, I'm really a stickler here at Organize 365 that you use all of your vacation days. So it's June. And now is when I start talking to people who've taken no vacation days. What's your plan? When are you going to go on vacation? When are you planning to use this time? Because otherwise what happens is we get all the way to November and either there's not enough time for them to take time off or they just don't. So now they're getting really good. Like, Lisa, here's how I'm taking this time off, whatever. And so I've been thinking about this. I was like, so Lisa, what time do you take off? And I was like, having a vacation day, like I go to the beach every summer because that's what we've done ever since I've known Greg. That's where his parents are. That's what we do. So that's a vacation. I often work while I'm there. And then I plan all these work trips, which I call vacations. And then we went away for the weekend for my birthday. So technically that's a trip, but I only took one day off. And I was like, I really should put my vacation time on the calendar. So I look from now to the end of the year. And I was like, well, but I mean, if I'm not working, what am I going to do? So I picked one day. I was like, Greg, our anniversary happens on a Friday this year. How about if I take that day off? We'll have a 3-day weekend. We can either go somewhere or we could stay here. I said, do you know, Greg, I never take vacation. He goes, it's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Why don't you take vacation? I said, I've been thinking about this. You know why? I've never been allowed to. I've always been a mom or a teacher, and you don't take vacation as a teacher. You do whatever you're going to do in the summer or on the school holidays. And as a mom, I mean, like the kids just go wherever it's a trip. It's not a vacation. I'm like,
right.
Unless I earned a trip when I was a creative memories consultant, I guess that's a vacation. Like, teachers don't have this mentality of picking vacation days. Like we just don't even think this way. We're like, okay, well, I've got to get all ready for my teaching. And then we go and we teach. And then we're done teaching. We're like, okay, I need to take care of my housework. I need to take care of my family. Now I need to grade all the papers. Now I need to plan for tomorrow. Like this is how we're wired. This is just what we do.
Mm-hmm. And, as you mentioned earlier, it's also expected. It's expected that when you go into the profession that this is not going to be done at 3:00 kind of job. And unfortunately, because there are people who are, in it for a purpose and for a calling and to make a difference, they're willing to go above and beyond. But I think what we've seen happen is that has been, sort of taken advantage of, in the same way that, as you mentioned with nurses, their goodwill and their deep care about their work is propping up an underfunded system. And it's now dependent upon, really stretching them beyond their capacity. So I love this idea of really thinking about when am I going to purposely not think about work? That is a new concept for many teachers. So like those boundaries between work and life they overlap so much. And that's the norm. And not only in this profession, but really in the culture.
Yes. And when I went into direct sales or I went into entrepreneurship, I mean, I took all those habits with me and I worked like all the hours. I didn't pick any hours that I didn't work. It wasn't until recently that I have full-time 40-hour week employees that and I don't email on the evenings and the weekends and call late meetings. I don't do any of those things that a quote unquote bad employer would do, but I do think all of the time. And so I've had to train myself not to even send the email. Because even if you send the email, they're going to reply. I'm like, why are you working? I know why I'm working, but why are you working? They're like, well, you sent the email. It has been a huge unlearning that I have purposely done in the last 18 months to get better with my own boundaries. Well, for sure, my boundaries for my team. Like I will protect their boundaries before mine. But now I'm starting to realize like this summer, I'm working less. I'm not working in the evenings. I'm not working weekends. It's really weird. I will tell you that. I'm needing more hobbies. I am so used to just doing the next thing at home and in work. It's hard for me to stop myself. And I've never had that employee mentality that I get paid for each hour that I work. I don't earn $1 per hour. I earned a salary.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so as a teacher, we don't really equate each of our hours to the dollar that we earn. Don't do the math, people. Please don't do the math.
Yeah, that's right. And I've
So
heard from
sad.
more teachers that that is actually the wake up call for them when they realize,
Mhm.
I'm working 60 some hours a week. That means if I'm working 65 and I'm only paid for 40, I gave the school
Yes.
25 hours of my
Yeah.
family and personal time that I could have been with my friends, that I could have been taking care of myself physically. I could have been pursuing hobbies. I could have been doing all of these other things that are on my to-do list. I could have been
Mhm.
sleeping, and I gave it away for
Mhm.
free. Because the thing is, even though you are salaried, you do have contractual hours. Like I was required to be at school from 7:30 until 3. So technically, those are the only hours I have to work. I don't have to work on evenings and weekends. It just would end up being that way sometimes because the job really wasn't designed to be fit within those hours.
Right.
But I think it's super important, even for salaried employees, to remember if you are expected to show up at work at a certain time and stay until a certain time, then even though you're not being paid an hourly rate, you still have contractual hours that you do not have to go beyond. And if you are going beyond them, you're working for free because you get paid the same, whether you're working the 40 hours or the 65. Your paycheck does not reflect
Mhm.
all of that overtime. And so you really have to make a choice about how you want to be spending your time. There may be things that it's like, you know what, if I stay an hour late, I'm going to feel so much more prepared tomorrow. I'm just going to do it. That's fine. But it's important to just be really intentional with the trade-offs and not to just try to work until everything's done, because it's never all going to be done.
Yeah, the hard part, Angela, is that we're held accountable for all the things that happen during non-teaching hours. Like we're legally even held responsible. Like these things need to get done. So when I come back to Organize 365 again, like I have all these ideas, I push them through the company. All of a sudden, people are working more than 40 hours a week. Sometimes they're working a lot more than 40 hours a week. I'm like, you guys, stop working. And they're like, but we have to get it done by this deadline. Sometimes I'll move the deadline. Sometimes I'll totally erase the project. But what I have learned over time is that if I put a project into the company, the team will take it across the finish line without a doubt, no matter what happens. If they have to work extra hours, they have to work on the weekend, if they have to troubleshoot, if they have to Google it and figure it out, they will get it done. And so it's my job as the employer to know how long that's going to take, or be able to estimate how long that's going to take, to know when it's taking more of my employees' time than I anticipated, and either move the deadline, erase the project, or hire more help so that they are not working extra hours. And that is really hard to do as an employer. I could do it with the team the size that I have, but as the team got bigger for a while, I started to lose track of projects I didn't know were getting done, got done to a level I didn't realize they were getting done, and ate up a lot of the team's time that I didn't understand. And so when you're looking at this from the grade level chair, from the building chair, from the administration, from the district, from the everything that you put in the pipeline for the teachers that has to get done, they can't say no. You can't always say no. Like, okay, you're already. I'm thinking like, that's great, Angela. I'm still going to work till 5, and I'm going to work Saturday, Sunday, because I'm going to get the IEP report done. I'm going to get the grading done. I'm going to I can't get it done in contracted hours. So I'm going to work the hours because I'm not in control of the flow of the amount of work I have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Teachers, many, many teachers think that way. And there's a lot of validity to that because the majority of what's on teachers' work plates is not an option.
Right.
I think it's really important to identify where are the areas that I am overcomplicating things. I'm
Yes.
creating more work for myself. I may
Yes.
be, if you know it's going to take you 15 hours to grade a stack of essays, then you can't assign an essay every single week. When are you ever going to grade it? You're going to have to
Right.
rethink some of your planning process, your assessing process. Like there are definitely ways that you can streamline your processes and save yourself many hours a week. I would say up to 5-10 hours a week, just simplifying or eliminating certain tasks. But when it comes to
Okay.
the stuff,
Give us the top 3. You got to give us the top 3. Like, okay, just off the top of your head, what's 3 things that you see teachers do? They're like, oh yeah, that'd be easier. For me, it would be like putting all the little bubbles on the end of every stick when you're doing printing. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like I used to always do this. Like when I would write it, then you put little bubbles at the end so that it looks like it's a font, even though it's your handwriting. Yeah,
certainly
stop dotting things.
Yes, certainly there are times when we're spending more time doing things that look fancy, right? So
Yes.
in 40 hour, we call this the difference between hobby work and required work. So the required work is that you teach this lesson tomorrow. You may feel like, okay, the best way to do that is to have the slideshow. I need to have, these slides to be able to show the kids the information. But if you want to spend hours coming up with little memes that you can put in there and playing with the fonts and all that kind of stuff, that's hobby work. That's something you're doing because it's fun for you. It's something creative, it's relaxing, it's enjoyable. So start to notice, okay, if I've already been working, I've already been in school for 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours today, is this required or is this hobby work? So really getting clear on that, I think is important. One of the main places that I tell teachers to think about is figure out how many assignments you are actually required to assess in a week. There are many teachers who've never even thought about this. For me, I've taught in 3 different districts and at the elementary level. Each time it was 2 grades per subject per week, 2 math grades, 2 reading grades, 2 science grades, 2 social studies, 2 writing grades. So that's 10 grades a week. So why am I grading 10 stacks of papers a day? I don't need to do all of that. The district is not making me do that. So if I have stories that I'm telling myself like, oh, I need to, this is how am I going to get the kids to be accountable? How am I going to get them to do their work if I don't grade it? How will I know how they're doing if I don't give a formal grade? There's so many other ways to answer those questions. There's so many ways to monitor student learning, to do informal assessment, to give feedback without giving a formal grade. Really thinking about how many grades you are taking and how many assignments you're giving is huge because most teachers are giving way too much work. It's too much for the kids to do, and it's too much for them to grade. And it's because they feel this pressure, to do it all. And I understand the pressure. But this is where you really have to focus on what's going to make a difference. If you have, 3 assignments, let's talk about math, for example, because math is something where you tend to do the same thing over and over again for practice. If I'm giving them 3 similar assignments this week, do I need to grade all 3 of them? And do they really need all 3? Maybe they don't. Can they demonstrate mastery after 1 and then they don't have to do the rest? Like, just thinking more outside the box instead of just doing things the way we've always done them can help so much with the streamlining.
That's great. Hobby work versus actual work. Because when we were talking about all this, I was like, but I really like to do the lesson plans. And I really liked to go through my notebook and redo my sheets and that is hobby work. I mean, my teaching was as much a passion as it was actually my income. So just knowing that, oh yeah, I'm going to go do hobby work. I would say I do a lot of organized 365 hobby work. This week I redid a whole journal. There's no ROI on that for the team. It was totally just something I wanted to do, but my family saw it as work. It wasn't really work. It was entrepreneurial hobby work. I love that.
Yes. And the family connection is really important there because a lot of teachers feel guilt about neglecting whoever it is at home, whether it be, a friend, a partner, a roommate, children, an elderly parent they're supposed to be caring for. The family, whoever it is they live with, sees them as working all the time.
Yes.
They don't know the difference between, I'm on deadline for these report cards and, I just felt like making these fun games for my students. They don't see it any different. So really getting clear in your own head and telling the people around you, I will tell my husband sometimes, I am interruptible right now. I'm in my office, I'm on my computer, but I'm just messing around with things and having a good time. Feel free to come in, talk to me whenever. We really try to keep those doors of communication open so that he knows when I'm really trying to concentrate and when I'm not, because that can be another big strain with the hobby work is it's something that we're doing that's fun for us, but it appears that we're working all the time. And it can also be this kind of situation where you feel like I don't need to distinguish between hobby work and required work because it's something that I still feel like I have to do. So many educators have gone into the field because they love to be creative or they're really passionate about their subject matter. And when you enjoy creating new things or you're really excited about this concept, you are going to want to spend extra time, creating these little videos and activities and this and that. And it's really a fun thing to do. And as we have seen the creativity being sucked out of the teaching profession over the last couple of decades, I feel like that's even more true. I used to be able to get my creativity fix just from regular daily routines with kids because I had so much more autonomy than a lot of teachers are given now. The hobby work is the only time that some teachers are able to be creative and have fun and really get into that passion for that project or the subject area. So I never want to take away teachers' hobby work. If you want to just dive all in on your ancient civilizations unit and just have a ball, creating these, pyramid model, go for it. Do the thing that still keeps you passionate, but just be aware of how much time it's taking up and what your opportunity cost is. What are you saying no to? So you can say yes to that, and making sure that the other people in your life that you care about are cool with that they know, okay, this is something that I really enjoy doing and I want to spend my evening like this. Is that okay with you? And that they don't feel neglected by you or feel like all you ever do is work, because there's nothing worse than being told, you're never around, or I can never count on you, or I never see you, you never do anything with me anymore. Like that kind of guilt, I think probably every teacher has faced at some point. And so really getting clear on hobby work can help with that.
So this hobby work, I'd like to press into this a little more. I want to take it a different direction. I would say that I definitely did hobby work, but also I would take my work to a level of excellence versus a level of good enough. And I did this for two reasons. One, because I wanted to have excellence and I was a younger teacher, but two, I was usually under administrators that were very exacting and perfectionistic. So if they ever showed up in the classroom, they immediately saw what wasn't done or what wasn't perfect. And then they would judge you on that, or they would write it up or whatever. For whatever reason, I usually was under someone who was very authoritarian. And so I was always trying to have everything perfect so that when they came in, there would be nothing that they could see that was wrong. Now, let me just tell you, they always found something wrong. So perfection is not a thing. It's just not a thing. And I'm thinking about the slides you're talking about, making the slides and finding the right meme. If you're submitting the slides to your administrator to look at, they're always going to give you something that you could do better because they are, educating and helping you improve as well. The students don't notice any of that. Like you could take it like to 50% of that level and they're still going to love it, especially if you throw a cartoon in there. They're going to think it's great. They don't care if the font is different on each slide. They don't care if you forgot to put a period there. Like they're not going to notice. Your kids are not going to notice when they're going through the content. They just want to know, what do I need to know that's on the test? And if you can make learning more fun, they want learning to be more fun. But I was also, so that was one reason why I was trying to make things perfect. The other reason why I was trying to make things perfect was because I was under this grand delusion that if I could get this lesson plan done optimally, the next year it was going to be easier for me because I was going to be able to recycle these lessons. And it never happened, not even one single year, because every single year I had a different class with different students in it, a different grade, a different building, a different co-teacher, a different team, I only retaught math twice and 4-year-old preschool twice. That's it. That's all I ever retaught for a second year in a row. And yeah, that second year was maybe 10, 20% easier, but it wasn't like I could do it on autopilot. It wasn't like I was a fifth grade teacher for 25 years. And even if you're a fifth grade teacher for 25 years, like you are not teaching today what you taught 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You read a new book, you went to a new conference, you have new teachers. Like this idea that I can do more work now so that I could do less work later didn't seem to work for me in teaching.
Yes. Oh, I'm really glad you brought that up, because you know what I flashed back to this time when I was teaching in Fort Lauderdale? We got new state standards. I had to write them on the board. And that was when this was a new thing. Teachers had not been required to do that before.
Yes.
And so I thought, well, I don't want to write them on the board. What I will do to save myself time in future years is I will write them on chart strips, display them in a chart strip holder.
Yes.
And then I can just pull them out. Yeah. So I spent, you don't want to know how many hours writing all of these standards. Math was in green and science is in yellow and blah, blah, blah. I bought a little organizer box, put them in the organizer. Beautiful. Great. Guess how long those standards lasted? 1 year. And then we went to Common Core.
This is like when you, as the parent, have decided you've had it with the Legos. And so you're going to organize them all by color so that they won't be messed up anymore. Because I did this. It took me 6 weeks. 6 weeks. We had so many Legos. And then the first thing Joey said was, this is boring. I like them when they're mixed. And he poured them in together. Just about lost it. But this is what we do at home. This is what we do in work. This is what we do as teachers. This is what we do as parents. We keep thinking, you know what? I am so overwhelmed. This is so much work. This is so much chaos. I know what I'll do. I will create this great system and then I'll be able to duplicate it. It doesn't work in parenting. It does work in housework. It does not work in teaching. Like, give up the ghost, for crying out loud. It's just, and it is fun when you start the chart paper exercise. Halfway through, you're like, well, I'm halfway through. Now I got to finish it, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Like, it'll be so good when it's done.
Yes.
And it really wasn't, because you know what? Then I had to dig through the chart strip box and find the right one. I'm like, you know what? When I look at how long that took, and you know what else I did, which now I really regret, is I laminated them.
Yes.
So that
Everything
was
that
more
doesn't
time.
move, we
Yes.
laminate, then you've got to cut it out. But first you had to color
Yes.
it. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So much
So I
time.
spent all that time in a laminator, all the time cutting it out. Now, all of that plastic, those chart strips, I threw them away. I don't know how many years ago. They're still sitting in a landfill. They will like never biodegrade because they're plastic. So I like killed the earth for absolutely no reason. I spent probably 20 hours of my time that I could have been doing something that was either more enjoyable in my personal life or something that actually made an impact for kids. That made zero impact for my students, me having those perfectly organized chart strips. But I thought I was going to be saving myself time later. And in retrospect, what I realized was I should have weighed the cost ahead of time. I should have really thought out, how long is it going to take me to do this versus putting them on the board every single day, or maybe just start off the year with that and see if a better system occurs to me. Like one thing that maybe I would try now is have a student write them.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, that sounds like it's delegated still.
I would always have kids who would show up to class a few minutes early. They would be there before the bell ring. Let the kid come into class 5 minutes early, right on the board. In third grade, they would think that's the coolest thing in the world. Honestly, I think even middle and high school kids, there were certain personalities who would enjoy that. Let them write it. It's in their handwriting. Now they have ownership of it, and I didn't even have to think about it. All I have to do was just point it out and say, write this one, this one, this one from, whatever printout or whatever poster, whatever else I had. I could have had a poster printed out and circled or highlighted the ones next to it, like maybe laminate the poster and then put an arrow next to the one or circle, or I don't know, put a sticky note next to that one. There's so many other ways I could have done that were more efficient, but I just had it in my head that this was going to save me time later. And to go back to what you were saying earlier about the perfectionism, I mean, it was beautiful. That was like, what administrator wouldn't be thrilled to come in there and see that?
Cameo for those of you that are watching from YouTube. Hey, I need my credit card. I'm recording a podcast. Joey just came in and gave me a hug and he walked out the door and I didn't get the credit card. All righty, then that's not good. Amanda, just leave that in the podcast. That is real life. See, you work, your kids just work with you. So I think, I'm going to keep going back to this probably for the rest of my life now because of COVID. We had somebody cleaning our house, couldn't clean our house. When COVID started, it wasn't until week 7 that all of a sudden the dust accumulated everywhere. From weeks 1 to 6, no dust whatsoever. If you're dusting every week, every 2 weeks, every month, you're dusting too often. You only need to dust your house every 6 weeks, and then you'll stay above it and you'll never see the dust. There are things like this that we are doing in education too, that either we've always done them, they looked cool on TV. I don't know why we do them. There are things that we do that we think other teachers are doing or that we need to do that really either don't need to be done at all, can be done by somebody else, can be done less frequently. But we don't often are able to stop and put our head above the water and start to think through. So Angela, this is the prime opportunity. It's the middle of June and July. Hey guys, I'm getting the credit card in case anybody was worried on the podcast. Thanks, Joey. It's in his car. So you can, when you're like, oh yes, I've got this time this summer to do things on my house, to do things on my family, to do things for me, and to prepare for the next school year. As you're all excited to prepare for the next school year, like I actually want to prepare for the next school year for you because I miss it. When you go to do this project, think through, okay, how long is this going to take? What impact is this going to make? What am I not going to be able to do because I'm choosing to do this? And it could be that I'm not going to be able to add new trade books to all of my units because I'm writing chart strips. It could be I'm not going to be able to go to the pool 4 more times with my friends, with my kids, with my neighbors, because I'm in the house cutting out laminated chart strips. Or it could be like, no, we've been doing this for 5 years. I've always wanted to do this. This is the big thing that I want to do. I know I'm going to stay in this grade and this is something I'm going to do. I want to invest the time to do it and go ahead and go forward and do it. But thinking through how much time, how much cost, and what's the opportunity cost? What could I be doing with this time that I'm not doing this time because I'm choosing to do this?
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. That is exactly what teachers do not have time to do during the school year. And often during the summer, summers get busy too. You may have a second job, you're doing PD, You've got caretaking duties. The summers go by really fast. And there's sometimes the lack of structure is really hard for people too. They find that they just, nothing gets done because they didn't have their regular routine. So there's all kinds of reasons why even the summer can be really difficult, but it's a great time to start this habit of really being intentional with your time so that you can carry it over into the new school year. It's very hard to start something like that in August, which is just like a really kind of nutty month. To start it in June or July and just start to be really intentional about, okay, what are the things that I want to do today? What can I realistically get done? And that's why I recommend for 40-hour members that they use a prioritized to-do list. So there's a section for morning, a section for afternoon, a section for evening. So you don't just have this list of 50 things you're doing during the day. You're deciding, the night before or that morning, you're looking to see, okay, what am I going to get done this morning? What in the afternoon? What in the evenings? And so, if you're making this list at 7 a.m. and you've got 25 things, they can't all get done that morning. You're going to have to space them out. And I think being really intentional about when you plan, when you're going to do things helps. Because if you just say, I'm going to do it today, the day just flies by. You have to decide what time of day. And then you can see, okay, well, if I put in clean out the garage, well, then I'm not going to go. That's that's the whole day. That's not just the morning. Number one. Number two, I'm going to be tired afterwards. I'm not going to want to cook. I'm not going to want to clean. I'm not going to want to do any of that stuff. So anything that I assign to myself for that evening, if I have to assign anything for that evening, I should let myself rest if possible, should be something I can do while laying down, sitting down, something on the computer, something that is not physically demanding. Like it forces you to really analyze what your energy levels are like during the day, what's possible, what's not possible. And then you don't end every single day feeling like, I didn't get everything done I was supposed to. And now I'm starting the next day behind. You're being really intentional up front about what could I realistically get done today and not overscheduling yourself because it feels awful to be constantly behind.
Yeah. I think, boy, have not only teachers, but anybody listening has really gotten some good things to think about. Like, are you doing hobby work? Are you trying to reach a level of excellence instead of a level of done? Like, who are you doing this for? Are you doing it for you? Are you doing it for an administrator? Are you doing it for some invisible thing that's judging you, that's not even judging you? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And really be more conscious about the work and the choices that you do versus reactive to what you think is being expected of you. So if Ed Week says that teachers are reporting that they're working 52 hours a week, and Angela, your audience is saying that they're working 62 hours a week, what do you notice after educators go through the 40-hour teacher work week?
It's a mouthful.
What do they notice? I know. I always want to say 40. I always want to say it wrong. So I'm trying to say it
40 hour.
The 40-hour. After they go through the 40-hour program, like how soon do they start to see results? How many hours are dropping off? Like what have you noticed of people that you've been able to follow through?
Yeah. So we've done a lot of surveys with our members, and we found that most of them are able to take off at least 5 hours off their work week that very first month. Like right away, they're able to do that. And then it's just sort of compounds over time because you start off with one set of habits, and then the next month you learn about some new habits. And then the next month you add some more on, and each month has a different focus. So one month is on lesson planning, and we work on how to streamline that. Another month is on grading. Let's get that streamlined. Another is on time management for kids. So really maximizing your instructional time with students, helping them keep on task, helping them keep up with deadlines, dealing with makeup work, missed work, all that kind of stuff. So each month you have a different area of focus. And when you add those together, I think that's what really helps create permanent change. But teachers can see results right away just by even some of the things that we've talked about so far.
Yes, that's what we noticed with the Sunday basket as well. When you start the Sunday basket within the first 6 weeks, you consistently have an extra 5 hours each week of bandwidth and reduced mental overwhelm.
Wow.
I think that is interesting. You start piling these together. And that's the other thing, like there is no magic wand. You can't buy a special planner or buy any of these programs. And all of a sudden you're going to only be working 40 hours a week. Education is not really a 40-hour a week job, but it doesn't have to be a 62 or 52-hour a week job either. You can have a little bit more say in that. I think that finding a quick win, 5 hours, equivalent of maybe losing 10 pounds, you're like, okay, this is working. I can eat salads a day for a while because I'm seeing some progress. You'll see some immediate progress, but then ultimately your weight, your finances, your productivity are all a result of consistent daily habits, small micro changes that you make, different ways that you start to see the world that compound over time to lead to a debt-free lifestyle, a healthy weight and energy level, a more realistic work schedule that you feel a little bit more in control of and less reactionary to, does not happen overnight. One of the things I love about the Organized 365 programs, I'm so excited that you agree with this as well. Your programs are also lifetime purchase. When you make the purchase, you have the purchase for life. I love that because I did it because as a female, whenever I buy things, I try to be as proactive as possible. But if my house, my spouse, my kids, my whatever, like when people need things of me, I change my schedule to meet other people's needs. And so because I do that, if I sign up for a program or whatever, I may sign up and the next day something happens in my family that I'm called to do that. And I can't do the program I just signed up for. I like being able to go back and do it over and over again. What I love in Organized 365 is, oh my gosh, you guys are still doing this 8 years later. You're like, yeah, yes. I signed up for this 8 years ago and I'm going through, this is my 19th round. And like, here's what I'm doing now. Like, it's so awesome. It's so awesome that you can do it that often, but also it's really, really impactful for those that are just starting. To see people who are still excited about growing these habits and how far people have come, and the mentoring and encouragement you give to brand new people who've just decided to join. Yeah. If you don't have a lifetime program and people are always just joining you each round, everybody's new all the time. Everybody's overwhelmed and anxious when they join, and they're not sure if they're going to get through it in time. And all of that is eliminated when you have programs that are lifetime. They're much more like Montessori education, where, oh, welcome to the party. Here's what we're doing. By the way, my first round, that's exactly what I saw too. And you just keep going, and you just have these people that now you can do life with and grow and develop your skills together. So I personally did it because I didn't want the pressure on myself or my audience to be able to complete a program. The benefits of having lifetime access to everything I offer have been so much greater than I ever even anticipated when I first did that.
I think it's so cool to see people who work back through the program like 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and I hear teachers who say, I go back and I look at the back to school resources in 40 hour every single August. And it makes me so happy because I could have released what I'm doing as a book. People have asked me before, like, do you have a book? Because a book is like cheaper and, theoretically you could read it in a weekend, but I'm like, it's not that this is not how change to your organizational habits and your time management works. I have read so many books on productivity and organization, and ask me what was in them a week later. Some of it will get into my head. It will change my thinking, but it's so much more powerful when I then listen to a podcast by that author every single week, or, I'm enrolled in some sort of ongoing course, or there's a community around it where we're discussing this kind of stuff every single day. Like, you need follow-ups and reminders, and you need layers. Because some things I've heard 5 times before it really sunk in. There were certain productivity principles that I'm like, I just can't seem to make it work. I don't know if that's really good for me. And then like the 6th or 7th time I heard someone talk about it, I was like, oh, that's how that could work. So that repeated exposure is so important, and hearing from other people who have been through the same process and who are different places in the process, as you were saying. That's how I feel like permanent change is created, because it really is about these consistent daily habits. And if you're not surrounded by other people who are thinking the same way that you are, and those kinds of influences in your life, it's just too easy for it to be a one and done.
Yeah. I mean, you could buy a treadmill.
Yes.
You can buy things, but to actually, walk an extra 2,000 steps every day is so much easier if all of you and your teacher friends are going to meet at school 15 minutes early and go around the building 2 times before you start your day. Or, at recess, you're going to walk the playground versus stand on the playground, and you have kids walking with you or whatever. Like, habit changes happen better in community than they do in isolation. It takes a lot of willpower and direction to do things on your own. You can, you totally can, but sometimes that accountability and that community really helps you. But also, the 40-hour Teacher Workweek is not the same program today as it was 2 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago. Same with everything in Organized 365. We're teachers. Angela and I are teachers. So we're going to constantly be iterating and changing and adding and growing. And I love that I have the freedom to do that as a teacher, and I don't worry about it. You bought in whenever you bought in, and you'll keep getting whatever I add to it. And so I'm allowed to keep reorganizing and creating and making all these programs the best that they can possibly be, knowing that you have access to whatever that I'm creating. It gives me freedom as the course creator.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great if we could still go to all those classes that we had in college? Like, wouldn't you love to be able to retake some of those classes, or be able to see how they're changing it, and just being able to audit it or download certain, like this lifelong learning to be able to absorb that information and move on. When it is your profession and your career, it's nice to be able to go back and refresh yourself, because we do want to be people of excellence.
Yes.
One of the things, we had a teacher workbox before, we took it away, and now we've come back with the education workbox. Our education workbox is for all educators, from early childhood education, daycare centers, elementary schools, high schools, community colleges, professors, PhDs. Like, we try to create something that would be for the entire education community and not just for teachers, because most of what teachers struggle with is all of the administrative requirements that keep coming down, not actually how to teach students. Like, they know how to teach students.
Yeah.
And if you look at, again, the EdWeek, I think it was the EdWeek survey, they said the number one thing that teachers wanted to spend less time on was administrative tasks. And the top two things that they wanted to spend more time on were planning and teaching. And so teachers don't mind planning time, because they're planning their creativity, like you said, and how they're going to present their lessons. It's the administrative tasks that are required and necessary and important that tend to take up a lot of time, because they're not creative and they're reactive. And there's not really a good system anywhere to organize any of that administrative stuff. It's not even taught in universities at all. So when we were recreating the education workbox, there really was almost no overlap between your program, Angela, and the Organized 365 program. But we took the lesson planning component completely out of the education workbox, because it's covered in the 40-hour teacher work week. And we made the education one completely administrative. It's just completely administrative. There is a category in there for students, like for you to keep student work, but there is no lesson planning or grading, which used to be in the teacher workbox. And part of why I did that is because then it would be more accessible to anyone in education, especially administrators, principals, grade level, like anyone inside of education, but also because we really wanted our product to be a perfect complement to your product, knowing that we have so much overlap in our audiences.
Right. And as you said, it is amazing when we compared our two programs to see, like, were we contradicting each other in anything, or were you doing any of the same things that I was that would be redundant? Nothing. But yeah,
Nothing.
we're perfectly aligned on like their entire way of thinking. It's a perfect match.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And so what we're doing is we're encouraging people to do the education workbox in the summer. We're even having teacher camp. I'm so excited. So we're going to have teacher camp in July, where you literally can create your entire administrative education workbox with all the paperwork organized that you're going to need for the entire year, create the checklist, create all of that, so that then during the school year, you can check this every week, but keep going on your planning and your lesson planning and refining your habits with Angela's program. And then we'll have a co-working time where you can go through your administrative workbox. We are super excited to have our education workbox launched so we can really support educators this next school year.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I think the two things together, I think, are just going to really help teachers so much in terms of organization and time management.
So Angela and I have been talking. Yes. I'm like, hey, Angela, you want to talk again? She's like, what are you doing, Lisa? I'm like, here's what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? She's like, okay, yeah, I agree with that. So we kind of had a little rant a couple of weeks ago. I think I started it. I was like, this is ridiculous. Teachers are drowning. Nobody's helping teachers. I think it was back when I was doing the March Madness. I was doing Organized 365 Madness. And we were having this playoff of all of the Organized 365 products. It was an idea that Erin had, and we created this. I said to Erin, I was like, Erin, this is going to be a lot of lives. This is going to be a lot of contests and polls that you have to put in the app and in Instagram and all that. She goes, no, it won't be that big of a deal. We get halfway through. She's like, oh my gosh, Lisa, do you know how many of these I have to do? I was like, yes, I'm a math teacher. I knew it from the second you came up with this idea. Too late, Erin. We're in it. We got to keep going. She had missed a whole group of things. She's like, oh, I forgot that whole part of the bracket. I'm like,
Oops.
You were in the creative fields, weren't you? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, math graph. Anyway, so we were having all of these things go up against each other. And we had the business workbox going up against the teacher workbox. And like, I don't know, teachers obviously weren't playing the game because they were busy teaching. and so they got knocked out first round. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. The teacher workbox is so exhausted. They're just sitting on the sidelines cheering for the business workbox. They're like, we'll be back next year. We really just can't even play this year. But, you just take it and run and we will cheer from the sidelines. And so I've been thinking about it since then, about teachers. They wear their heart on their sleeves. They wear their heart on the outside of their bodies. And they just want so much for their students and for their profession and for their colleagues. Like they're just such givers by nature. And I was like, I cannot wait to launch this education workbox to be able to love on teachers this summer and really give them a great summer. That's why we're having summer camp, because isn't that so fun that you could have summer camp? But I want you to really think right now. The biggest gift that Angela and I are trying to give and what our products give is time. Like we literally, if what we were offering were programs that made your teaching more perfectionistic or got you another PhD, or it'd be a totally different conversation. But Angela and I both have the same heart of like, teachers are going to go to the end of the earth for their students no matter what. We do not have to encourage you in that, and we don't have to help you in that. You're going to have amazing lesson plans. You are going to meet the students that are in your classroom. We don't need to do that either. So all we're trying to do is say, hey, we were there where you were. We know that you are a person of excellence and there are all these requirements on your time and you're going to do them. And you're not going to say, I'm a contracted hour, I'm not doing it. You're not going to say that. So the only thing we know to do is how can we help you have more time to either take that time that you get and pour it in even more to your lesson plans. Fine, run the whole school if you want to, or give that back to yourself or your community or your family. You do whatever you want to do with your time. We are both just trying to give you time. So I want you to imagine if you do a Sunday basket, if you do Angela's 40-hour teacher work week, if you do the education workbox, and any of those will give you 5 hours a week. That's 5 hours every week, you guys. It's not just 5 hours once. It is these systems and these habits that give back time over and over and over again. Imagine if you had 10 hours a week. Imagine if you had 15 hours a week. What would you do with this time? Like it is a lot of time. So we're going to do a little bit of Lisa math, Angela. I am a math teacher. Lisa math is not real math. It's Lisa math. So the 40-hour teacher work week is $175, one-time investment. The education Friday workbox is $250, one-time investment. That's $375. It's not no money, but long-term, it's not a lot of money. And if you just saved 5 hours in one teacher year, so that's only 40 weeks of the year, not 52 weeks. So the 40 weeks that you teach, if you save 5 hours, just those 40 weeks, that's 200 hours. That would be $1.87 per hour that you're paying for these programs. And if you saved 10 hours, it would be 93 cents an hour. So 93 cents an hour is what you're paying to get your time back to do whatever you want to do with. And then years 2, 3, 4, 5 are all free. And then we have the optional teacher camp. Angela, do you have any other upgrades like that? Like we have teacher camp. It's going to be $250. It's July 11th to the 15th, where we're going to do live. Like literally that week, you're going to come to camp and have your workbox done. Do you have any other programs other than the 40-hour teacher work week?
Nope, just that. Well, we
Okay.
have one for instructional coaches and one for school leaders, but that's it for teachers.
Okay. So the thing is, you are going to spend the time either way. You're either going to spend it all or you're going to spend it this way. And we would love to support you and help you get more time. But really, the rant that I started with Angela, and we went back and forth for a while, is that for the love, why are buildings and districts not buying this school supply package for teachers? It's a one-time investment of $425. And your teachers are going to get back 5 to 10 hours every single week. Like it just 93 cents per teacher the first year and then free after. Like I don't understand how this math doesn't work at the administration level.
It's a matter of wanting to invest in their teachers. And I feel like every year that the attrition rate increases and then it becomes harder and harder to burn teachers out and just replace them with someone brand new. I think this will become more of a priority. And I do see more and more leaders every single year who are doing an outstanding job, really tending to their teachers' well-being and caring about their work-life balance, setting expectations school-wide, letting parents know we don't respond to emails on the evenings or weekends. Your child's teacher will get back to you Monday morning. I definitely see things going in the right direction in many, many schools. And that is super encouraging to me. And I hope that our programs can be a part of that, because this is not something that schools have to figure out on their own. You and I have already created systems. We've already tested it out with, massive amounts of educators. These are programs that work already and they're affordable. I mean, schools have professional development money, and we are happy to work with schools on purchase orders, on grant money. We do some help with as well. So, get those title funds, and we can tie this back to student impact, because an organized, productive teacher who's focused on what matters most and has time for the things that are most impactful for kids and has the mental bandwidth to identify what those things are that are most impactful for kids absolutely impacts students. So I'm 100% convinced. Like, every teacher who's gone through my programs has said, this has made me a better teacher. I do a better job. Not only do I have more energy for my kids, but I know what really matters for them. I know how to plan the things and spend my time on stuff that actually makes a difference for them. Not one person has said, I did this and it saved me time, but I feel like I'm really shortchanging my students, or, my test scores just bombed this year, or, my students didn't learn how to read this year because I didn't do anything. That's not how this works at all.
No.
The people who invest their time and money into these programs are dedicated educators. If someone doesn't care about doing a great job for kids, they're never going to spend time and money on something. The people in these programs are people who are passionate. They love this work. They want to do a great job in this work. And they just need to know that it is possible, that you don't have to work endlessly on nights and weekends in order to do a great job.
Yeah. And we would love for you to share this podcast with anyone else that is a decision maker in education, or other people that might want to do this with you in education, because we know that these programs work when you buy them individually to help change your own life and move you from reactive to proactive and save your time and help make you a teacher that has more capacity and has more mental bandwidth and has less anxiety. Like, we know that is a fact. But when the whole school or the whole grade level is working on the same system, these systems create a new language. Like Organize 365 now has, I think, 14 episodes of glossary, because I've created so many words for us to make the invisible work at home visible, so we can have a productive conversation, so we can stop dusting every week and only do it every 6 weeks. Like, let's really look at everything. Can you imagine if when you got your teaching job and you came in, they were like, okay, here's your teacher workbox or your education workbox, and here's your teacher 40-hour teacher workweek login. Now we're going to give you your handbook. The handbook goes in the blue slash pocket. We're going to give you these forms for IEP and ESL kids. Those all go in red slash pocket, so that when you have a team-wide meeting and you're going to have a meeting about, I don't know, the field trips you're going to take for the year, they're like, okay, everybody grab your orange slash pocket and bring, like, as a new teacher, you're like, okay, I need to find the orange slash pockets. Here's how we've labeled them. Here's what we call these things. So much that is difficult for teachers when they're first starting out is, what's the lingo of the building?
Yes.
That handbook, literally, I remember, I don't know if you remember this, when you got the handbook, if you didn't turn it in when you were done teaching, they deducted $10 from your paycheck. You had to remember where the handbook was.
We did have to turn it back in. Yes, we did have to turn it back in.
I don't know. Yeah, you have to turn it back in. What's your copy code? Like, great. Well, yellow is the folder that we always use to put your copies in, and put your copy code on the outside, so you'll know, like just new teachers, they don't know where they're going to put their copy code, or what, like, they don't have any scaffolding. You would never have your third grade students come in and then just start giving them assignments without notebooks and pencils and a locker and a desk and you give them all of the things. You're like, okay, everybody get your yellow notebook. We're going to start history now. In our yellow notebook, I want you to head it this way. I want to make sure you have your paper this way, and you turn in. We don't do that with teachers. We're just like, okay, you're going to come to the IEP meeting. There's no You
The
see what I'm saying?
structure's not there.
We wouldn't.
I never
Why
really
would you
thought
do
about
that?
it, Lisa, but you're right. I
Yes,
mean, I've
it's
worked in
nuts.
offices before. Like my college job was like leasing apartments. And I remember like that's my first time ever working in office. And I sat down at the desk and they were like, here are these forms. Here's this form. When
Yes,
this person
right.
comes in, you do this. You put this
Exactly.
over here. You run this like this.
Yeah.
Like you would never just throw someone into an office
Yeah.
job and be like, have a free for all with a stack of papers.
You would.
Like
Yeah.
it's actually kind of blowing my mind now that I think about it. It's not that I want to see mandated micromanaging structures for teachers, but this idea that we have no system to give them. You're
No
just
system.
Figure out all these acronyms on your own, keep track of all this
Yes.
online and physical paperwork.
Yes.
It is kind of mind blowing to me.
It's on the website. It's on the district website. Go find it. That's what you're supposed to do. And then they reorganize the district website and you didn't bookmark that page. And then for the mastermind, the teachers that went through the mastermind to help us create the education workbox, they said, here's the thing, either they were or weren't digital before COVID. Everyone is digital now, even if they're back in person. But the problem is you go to log on to whatever the science platform is, and the kid doesn't know what their password is. So these teachers had created password lists. They took student lists, and then they'd be like science class. It'd be all the students and then all the students' passwords. So when the kid didn't remember, they're like, okay, your password is blah, blah, blah. And then they would tell them. And so they had these logbooks of all these passwords. So they have to know their password to get into every program, and all the students' passwords to get into all the programs, which is like already like 8 different programs. Then there are the teacher programs, which are like another 8 programs. I'm like, this is why I'm a paper person. Are you kidding me? They're like, yeah, we just finally just printed the weekend that I took and I made all the password lists for the kids. And some of you listening are going, oh, that's what I need to do. Yes, that's what we're doing at teacher camp, because this is the kind of stuff that will save you so much time. But no one's telling people to do that. Like the kids don't remember their passwords. Like there's so much that you do and you just kind of react and you don't realize what you're reacting. And then in your grade level, what is everybody doing? Like you're probably already thinking, what is my co-teacher doing about that? Everyone in the last 2 years has figured out what they're doing when the kids forget a password, and everybody's system is different.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And you're never trained in what to do.
No,
it's just one of those things you're expected to just figure it out on your own. Yes.
And as a new teacher, you usually get as much information from the existing teachers that you know to ask the questions for. Hey, I was doing this. How do you do this? Teachers are glad to share with you, but they're not going to sit down and go like, okay, Monday at 8 a.m. I do this. And then 8:05, like you'd have to literally shadow them to even know what questions to ask. So you don't even know what questions to ask. So you don't even know that they have a whole box full of forms and you don't have the box full of forms. And that's why you're always trying to find it.
Yep. You don't know what you don't know.
Please, for the love, give the teachers the school supplies. They need the school supplies. Well, Angela, I could talk with you forever. We did go over an hour. Angela saw my outline. She's like, oh, we could talk for a long time about this. I was like, don't test me. I talked to my sister for 2.5 hours. I can talk for a long time when you get me on something that I'm passionate about, and education and teachers are something that I'm very passionate about. So Angela and I are super, super excited to support anyone in the education field from moving reactive to proactive with the products and services we have. And we very much would love to partner with districts, buildings, private schools, whoever is looking to add this in, because both of our programs have a community component to it. Angela, do you want to share what supports go along with your 40-hour teacher work week?
Yeah, so we have a discussion group for elementary teachers, which is generally K-5 in the US, and for secondary teachers, which is middle and high school. You can be in both if you teach both. And it's a place just to get support, to just bounce ideas off of other people, to say, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. What am I missing? Or what else could I try instead? Or to say, I'm really struggling with this. What could I do? And also to share your successes. Yes. There are teachers who go in there a lot, and it's a wonderful time to look back on what actually worked and to have other people cheer you on when you're setting boundaries and you're saying no and you're shifting your priorities. Not everybody gets that. And so to be with other people who have like-minded goals for themselves, I've consistently heard people say that's one of the most helpful parts of the program. It's just not feeling alone in what you're dealing with, and also not trying to implement solutions alone and figure it out by
Mhm.
yourself. I mean, it was like you were just saying, just now, like
Yeah.
this idea, it's bananas that like we have to try to figure out like, how do I organize myself for an IEP meeting? Every individual teacher is doing this completely on their own with no structure, no system, no support. It should not be like that. This should be something that districts are providing, and it should be something that is prioritized, because teachers are wasting their time and energy that could be spent on students trying to figure out, where is my IEP paperwork? Not because they're disorganized, but because they were never given structure and support. So and obviously I could say a whole lot more.
Yeah. And if you're going on more like $1 per hour, let's say a teacher earned $25 per hour. Let's just say that that's what they earned per hour. So if they took 17 hours of work time, that would be the same amount of dollars that you're spending for all these programs. So less than half your week of work to create all of this information that you're getting from Angela and I. So on the Organize 365 side, we have an education workbox group in the app, which has 90 minutes a week of co-working time during the school year with Sherry. Sherry's going to be running that for us. And then we have teacher camp in the summer. That is additional fee to do teacher camp, but that app and that co-working time, that is something that is just going to go on and on and on and on. Because Angela and I, we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. So we're here to support you guys going forward.
Tell me, Angela, about what people do during that co-working time.
So we've already had it for the Sunday basket and for the business workbox. And now we're going to add it for the teacher. So for Sunday basket, you take everything out for the week. And then you open up all your mail and you go through all the notes you've given for yourself. And then they walk you through the basic 5 slash buckets. And then we have 4 more colors, and they deep dive into 1 color each week for the month. The workbox group is run by Steph. And that one, again, same thing. Anything you've dumped in there for the week for your work, you go through all your notes, all your emails, and you put them in the right slash buckets. And then they deep dive into 1 color each month. And then for the education workbox, because it's your administrative box, some of those are going to be set it and forget it for the year. And some of those you're going to go through on a regular basis. So Sherry will be figuring that out for us. And it's done it's done live in our app now. So we have a private app.
Very cool.
We created our own app, and it is so awesome. I love it so much. And for teachers, that's really helpful because they don't necessarily want everything on Facebook or on any of those. We found that the community is a big part of what we offered Organize 365. And even before the whole Facebook blow up, I was ready to do an app a long time ago because we've always had some people who aren't on Facebook, and then they weren't able to get into our communities because that didn't really work with them. We also had 20% of our audience who had fake Facebook accounts just to be in our program. 20%. I was like, okay, this is nuts. So I was like, okay, I'll pay for the app because, it's not an expense to them. We just pay for it because it is something that we pay to host. It's been great. It's been really, really great. So we love it. Are you on Facebook?
So we actually offer both. We have a private message board forum that is not connected to any social media for the people who do not want to be on social media. But we have our original Facebook group still going just because so many people find it the easiest. They already have accounts. They know how to do it. Yeah. They're already checking on a regular basis. So we actually offer both, and people can choose what they want.
No Organize 365 members. I'm not going back. That's what they would like. And I'm like, no. The team's like, we're getting some requests. I'm like, no. So just so you know, that's not the team. It's Lisa who's been saying no. We do still have the free Organize 365 group, and we have our professional organizers think tank group. Those are both over 10 years old that are on Facebook. I think Michelle's in there moderating those, but everything we do is pretty much inside of our app. It's so fun. I love it.
That's amazing. That's goals.
Yeah. Well, Angela, I like to employ people, so I need to have things for them to work on. Thank you so much for joining me in this more than an hour long podcast. Angela, is there anything else that you wanted to just say or share about your products or just anything?
I think the main thing that I want teachers to remember is that if you are struggling to do it all, it is not because you are bad at organization or you're bad at time management or you're not a good teacher or you're just not working hard enough. The job of a teacher is extraordinarily demanding. It has gotten harder. It's not just your imagination. It has gotten more demanding, and the structures and supports are just not there. Mm-hmm. And so if you are struggling, know that, the problem is not you. The problem is that you need more support, and the support is available to you, not only through these programs, but also just reaching out to other educators and finding out how are they doing things. Stay in touch with other people and don't try to do all of this on your own, because it can be a really isolating profession. You're in your classroom with your students the vast majority of the day, and you're not really getting to collaborate with other educators. So if you're struggling, you're not alone, and you don't have to figure out solutions alone. And maybe most importantly, there are solutions. It is not a hopeless profession where you are just destined to be miserable and, working endless hours and constantly drowning in papers forever. Like, there is hope. There are better ways. There are ways to make this a sustainable career choice and to feel like you're on top of things without working endlessly on your nights and weekends. So be encouraged.
Yeah, we're just your teacher. We're just teachers. Yep. I'm just teaching you how to organize the administration, and Angela's teaching you how to organize the lesson. Like, we're literally just teachers for teachers. That's what we are. Mm-hmm. It's not that our way is better or you haven't figured out a way. I mean, a lot of people, eventually you have to figure out a way to do this on your own because it's not given to you. Mm-hmm. But if you have a system like Angela's or mine, where more than one teacher is doing it the same way, then it's easier to get people inside the whole building to do it the same way. I guarantee there's 20, 30, 40% of your staff in the building are very organized, seasoned teachers who have figured out most of what Angela and I are teaching.
Right.
They just are not also teaching it to you. They figured it out on their own. Whereas these systems, if you put them in building wide, then everybody has the same, just the same vocabulary, and it will ease the communication, because not everyone is naturally organized to begin with. It's a learnable skill, and over time you develop it. Mm-hmm. Angela, thank you so much for joining us. You can find out about the Organize 365 Education Workbox and Angela's 40-hour teacher work week by going to organize365.com/Angela. Angela, I'm sure you'll be on again in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lisa.